I'll give you a little bit of a background of who I am and why I'm even here, but I'm not going to go too deep into it because I want to maybe talk about that a little bit tomorrow. How many of you have ever heard or seen of a thing called movies and television? Has anyone here seen it? Is there anyone in this audience that has never seen a movie or television? Raise your hand. I have asked this question around the world, and it does not matter where I go. Brothers and sisters, the movie industry is reaching the entire world. And so, I hope that you gain a blessing out of some of these presentations over the weekend, because I was raised in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I grew up going to church every single weekend, and my parents knew enough to tell me that the television is mostly not good and that we shouldn't watch it, and that's all they were able to tell me. And of course, when I got to my adult life, I went to Hollywood and began making movies and television for a living. So be careful what you tell your children. They actually might go and do something opposite. But I didn't know what some of the dangers of movies and television were. I worked in the industry for 10 years, and I lost my way. I stopped going to church, I stopped reading my Bible, I stopped having anything to do with God, and I literally wanted to only make it successful in the Hollywood business. And then God got a hold of my heart. And when He got a hold of my heart, He brought me back into the church and lovingly wrapped His arms around me, and He opened my eyes to what the movie industry is doing to your mind. And so tonight, this presentation is called Pseudology, but it deals with how does movies and television affect our brains. Because have you ever thought, I know the truth, I read my Bible, I come to church, I can watch whatever I want to watch, and I can pick the good from the bad. Have you ever thought this? And have you ever thought Hollywood is just fake? It's not real. I know it's not real, so therefore it doesn't affect me. Have you ever thought that? I used to think that as well, brothers and sisters, and I hope after tonight you will see we are affected by everything we see, taste, touch, and hear. I just came on, so I hope you heard most of that. All right, let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, as we open up this conversation here tonight, Lord, thank you for this opportunity to come and speak freely and to share our faith and to wrestle with these things that potentially lead us away from you. So I pray that, Lord, you speak your words through me tonight. Hide me behind your cross. I have nothing to say, but you have something to say. So go and use me. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. I have a couple of Bible verses that I'd like to read to you. Proverbs 23:7 says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." And we know the Bible means as you think in your mind. The only thing you're taking to heaven with you is what? Your thoughts and your feelings, your character. You're not taking your body, you're not taking your money, you're not taking anything but what you've created in your mind. And so I want you to listen to what the Bible says. It says in Colossians 3 verse 2, it says, "Set your mind on the things above, not on the things of this earth." God is asking us to constantly keep heaven and our relationship with God in the forefront of our mind. How does everything we do fit into that context? Romans 12:2 says, "And do not be conformed by this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is good and acceptable and the perfect will of God." God is promising us that He wants to renew your mind. He wants to give you new thoughts, new feelings, His way of thinking. But you know what? The world wants you to think like the world. Look at this. I found this quote. This comes from Mrs. White. And I want you to listen to this because I thought this was a very powerful quote. It says, the greatest evidence and the power of Christianity that can be presented to the world is a well-ordered, well-disciplined family. This will recommend the truth as nothing else can, for it is a living witness of the practical power upon the heart. We are all called to be witnesses for God, are we not? We're all called to share the gospel with this dying world out there, right? But what does Mrs. White say? The best way you can share the gospel with the world is when the world looks at your family, because that's what shows the power of the gospel on the heart. This is how God set it up. He made the man of the household like the priest. This is what Mrs. White says. All the members of the family center around the father. He is the lawmaker illustrating in his own manly bearing the sterner virtues, energy, integrity, honesty, patience, courage, diligence, and the practical usefulness. The father is in one sense the priest of the household, laying upon the altar of God the morning and the evening sacrifice. So this is how God set up the ability to share the truth and the gospel with the world. As the man is the center of the household, listen to this, men, before you get too far ahead of yourself, listen to what she says about the wives. The queen of the home, the king upon his throne, has no higher work than that of the mother. The mother is the queen of her household. She has in her power the molding of her children's characters, that they may be fitted for a higher immortal life. An angel could not ask for a higher mission. Women, do you hear that? An angel could not ask for a higher mission than what you've been given to educate and teach your children about God. Now listen to this. That's the role of the woman. What's the role of the children? We know from Ephesians 6, 1 through 3, it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, that it will go well with you, and that you may live long in the land. So this is how God set it up. If you have a priest of the household who is instilling those virtues into the child, the mother is building up the morality of the child, and the children obey the parents. Listen to what she says. If the marriage vows have been promised to be as one, the wife covenanting to love and obey her husband, and the husband promising to cherish his wife, the law of God is obeyed, the demon of strife will be kept out of your home. Brothers and sisters, did you know it is impossible for the devil to come into your home if you have a home that is set up like God set the home up? But guess what? What does every single one of us have inside of our home? A window into the world. We all have this thing called television that allows the world to come into the very middle of our homes. Is it affecting us? Is what I hope to convince you of tonight. This is a pie chart of the American use of time. So I think you could probably apply this to your country as well. This is probably very consistent around the world. But the purple here is about how much time people sleep. They sleep about 8.9 hours out of the day. The red is how much people work. They work about 5.7 hours out of the day. The blue is watching television, looking at social media, or playing sports or anything like this. The pink is what people spend in religious activities. They spend about 3 to 4 hours a day in leisure activities, and they spend 20 minutes reading their Bibles. Brothers and sisters, I want you to think of your own life. Is it easier for you to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie than it is to read your Bible for 2 hours? Does that make sense? This is what has the world's attention. It's got everybody paying attention to this thing. I'm going to play a clip for you that is a commercial. And this commercial came on during the Super Bowl, the American football game, which is the time that most Americans watch TV. And this commercial was played in the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl when everybody is watching this game. And this is what this commercial says. There's audio.
I'm Alec Baldwin, TV star. You know, they say TV will rot your brain. That's absurd. TV only softens the brain, like a ripe banana. You know, the next time someone says TV rots your brain, laugh. Laugh hard.
That laughter will force our televised intoxicants deep into your cerebellum, slowly rotting it into a quivering blob of tapioca.
Your parents were right, your teachers are right, even that creepy scoutmaster with the tight brown shorts on his way. TV is slowly rotting your brain and turning it into a slimy, gooey, mushy pile of pudding, and there's nothing you can do about it. See? I just told you what was happening, and you're still watching TV. Amazing.
I'm Eliza Dushku, star of the new show Dollhouse. It's a potent blend of twisty plot lines and insane action that'll keep your eyes glued and your brain rotted, as your high school teacher used to say.
Mushy mush. And the best part is there's nothing you can do to stop it. I mean, what are you going to do, turn off your TV and your computer? Now that we're beaming TV shows to your lab-based computing boxes for free, 24/7, they're finally rotting your brains, just like Mom promised they would. So keep watching. The sooner your brains have percolated into bubbly, cheesy goo, the sooner we can slip them through your ear canals and pass them through our lower intestines. Because we're idiots. That's what we do. Hulu, an evil plot to destroy the world. Enjoy.
Does this shock anyone? You know what's interesting to me about this? It's obviously a joke. They're playing a joke. They're saying, will TV really rot your brain? This is an evil plot to destroy the world. But they didn't put it on in the middle of the night when no one would see it. They put it on in the one time that everyone would see it. Did you know that after this commercial played, the company increased by 60% immediately? That's how powerful commercials are. So when I saw this, I was very fascinated with this. So I spent nearly 3 years traveling around the United States and trying to find out, do movies really hurt our brains? And if so, what is the evidence that that actually happens? We went around and we started interviewing neurologists and doctors and scientists and people who knew and studied the effects of media, but I purposely chose people who didn't believe in God. Because I didn't want them to be influenced with, well, you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, let's talk about this from a Christian perspective. I only wanted the science. Is there something damaging with the TV on your brain? So this particular gentleman studied what it does to little children's brains.
The concern I had was that exposing the developing brain to the rapid sequencing of television programs, particularly baby DVDs, which are more rapidly sequenced even than normal television, would precondition the mind to expect high levels of input. And that would lead to shorter attention spans later in life. Reality couldn't, if you will, keep pace with the expectations that have been created by watching too much fast-paced programming later in life. And we found just that the more television that babies watch before the age of 3, the more likely they were to have attention problems later in life.
So I'll re-say what he said. Children, small children, under the age of 2 and 3 years old, need to develop their brains. When they watch television, because the way that television is designed to keep your attention, it causes the child's brain to develop and not be able to pay attention. So they found that every hour of TV that a child watches every single day increases their inability to pay attention by 10%. You know what's one of the biggest problems with our children in school today? They can't pay attention. And we look back in the history and we see the dawn of this thing called television and this dawn of the thing called attention problems with children. This is a video clip of my son. This is a few years ago. He's now 5 years old. But notice how he's putting things in his mouth. When you're born with billions and billions of abilities to make neurological connections. In fact, your brain is born with the ability to make more connections than you are at any other time in your life. You try to teach a child 5 different languages, and a child can learn 5 different languages. You try learning 5 different languages. How come you can't learn it, but a 5-year-old can? Have you ever thought of that? Because here's how God set up the brain. He set up the ability to make any kind of connections that you want to make when you're a young child. And you know the axon of the neuron, this is the axon, there is a protection that goes over the pathway of the axon called myelin. So what happens is, as a child, you have all these abilities to make connections, and then which connections you make, it causes a sheath to go over those connections. Now here's what happens. When you're 12 years old, your brain releases an enzyme that dissolves all poorly myelinated connections. So like the old saying, if you don't use it, you what? You lose it, is so true. The brain prunes those connections and makes pathways strengthened. So what happens when you stick a child in front of the TV and you don't allow them to taste and test the world? What does a child do when he watches TV? He doesn't do anything. He doesn't move around. Children need to move around. So here he's talking about, we have these things in the United States called Baby Einstein DVDs. You ever heard of these? They're supposed to make your baby smarter. Well, listen to the research that's actually coming out. They're actually terrible for your child and are damaging to their learning capacity. And here this doctor's going to talk about this.
Which brings us to Baby Einstein. Now, many of you probably have not seen Baby Einstein, but I will show you a random 20-second clip from Baby Einstein Day on the Farm, and here it is. In that 20-second clip, there were 7 scene changes, about 1 every 3 seconds. It's about the most exhausting day on the farm since John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath. And of course, it's nothing like being on a real farm, right? Adults watching this find it discombobulating because your mind is trying to make a coherent narrative out of this. And there is no coherent narrative. It jumps all over the place. But babies aren't trying to make a coherent narrative out of it. They're not capable of doing that. It's all of that screen change, all of that stimulation that's keeping...
So I'll tell you what he's saying. He's basically saying that when a child watches TV, they're not able to make those connections inside of their brain. So what happens is they're paying attention to the TV because it's blinking at them, not because they're following along. It's not possible for a child to put that narrative together. And did you see in that clip, there was this random picture of a cow, random picture of a farmer. None of it makes sense. So what happens with children is you teach them and train their brains to not make sense of what they're seeing. And there's damage that happens. If you just look up on the internet, you can see all kinds of articles. Here's one that ABC News, an American news place, said too many kids watch TV. There's one from NBC, why babies and toddlers should not watch TV. The American Pediatric Society says children under the age of 2 should never ever watch TV. It doesn't matter if it's religious programming, it doesn't matter if it's what? Nothing. Not a thing. Why? Because they need the time to develop their brains. So those of you that have small children, I suggest you look this up on your own. Just type this into the internet. Is it okay for my child to watch TV? And you do the research. There's plenty of it on the internet. France actually put a ban on broadcasting TV towards babies. You cannot make a TV channel aimed at some child 3 years and under in France. And they're not doing it because of religious reasons. We have another thing inside of our brains called mirror neurons. They're associated with learning. So as a child watches a parent, like let's say you brush your teeth in front of a child, the child will mimic you. If you put a toothbrush in their hand, they'll copy you. That's because we have these things inside of our brains called mirror neurons, and they're associated with learning. So this guy's going to talk a little bit about what mirror neurons are.
This is brand new science. This is just out of the lab. We may have some special circuitry in our brains that helps us whenever we look at each other.
Well, as it happens, scientists have an explanation for this strange ability to connect. It's new. And it began entirely by accident at a laboratory in the lovely old city of Parma, Italy, where a group of brain researchers was working with monkeys. And they were testing a neuron, that's a brain cell, that always made this sound whenever the monkey would grab for a peanut. So the lab had all these peanuts around, and whenever the monkey made its move, the neuron would fire. Scientists thought, now here's a neuron that is essential to motion. It's a motor neuron. Then one day the monkey was just sitting around, not moving at all, just sitting, when a human scientist came into the lab. And when that scientist grasped the peanut, the monkey's cell fired. Now, the monkey had moved. It was the human that had moved, suggesting that this neuron up here couldn't tell the difference between seeing something and doing something. Seeing and doing were the same. Or more intriguingly, that for this neuron, watching somebody do something is just like doing it yourself.
Now I want you to listen to that, and I want you to think about that. We have cells inside of our brain that are associated with learning. When we watch someone do something in our brains, it's as if we're doing it ourselves. I want you to think about those movies that you like to watch, or TV that you like to watch. What if you watch movies with a ton of killing in it? Guess what? Neurologically, to your brain, it is as if you are doing it yourself. You see, the devil's brilliant. He's created a device that we watch other people sin, and we go, I'm not sinning, that's not me, I'm just watching. But neurologically, to our brains, it is as if you are doing that action yourself. Now, he goes on to show how this works. So he puts people in an fMRI machine to clinically prove how this operates.
To demonstrate, he put me into this very powerful fMRI brain scanner that can peer into the brain while it's working. And he gave me some goggles so he could show me pictures when I was in there.
So you can see here the eyeball of Robert.
And once he had a good view into my brain...
Nice looking brain.
Thank you.
Robert, you're not supposed to talk when we scan you, right?
Sorry. And then he said, okay, I'm going to show you a bunch of faces. And for each face, I want you to imitate it. So I did that. Then he recorded my brain while I moved my facial muscles.
We're going to do it right away now.
Then he said, okay, same faces, but this time, don't move a muscle. Just look. So I looked. When we checked the results, oh, there's my brain. I've never seen my brain before.
This is your brain.
Jacoboni says that the part of my brain that's working when I make a face, the same part gets busy when I see the face.
This is why it is important to understand it matters what you watch. Even if you know the truth, it matters what you watch. Because as you're watching these things, it is as if you are doing that action as well. The science is there, and they have proven this to be true. This is a doctor, his name is Dr. Neil Nedley. He's written a book called Proof Positive. And he works a lot with depression patients. And he talks a lot about what the function of the brain is, and specifically the frontal lobe. And so he's going to tell you a little bit about what is the function of the frontal lobe and why is this thing important in the context of watching television.
The frontal lobe of the brain is the seat of spirituality, morality, and the will. It's actually the analytical portion of our brain, and it's actually the decision maker. And so it's a crucial aspect in regards to our future success and happiness is how well our frontal lobe is functioning. And unfortunately, entertainment television suppresses the frontal lobe of the brain. Actually, in about 90 seconds of viewing it, the frontal lobe circulation begins to go down, and it actually has an adverse effect. And the interesting thing is people watch entertainment television often due to the fact that they feel a little depressed or anxious, and it kind of calms them. But in reality, it's a very short-term fix, and it's going to complicate things in the long run. Of course, I'm most known for the one who treats depression and anxiety. In fact, we treat the most severe forms of depression and anxiety. And what we have found is virtually every depressed patient will have about a 40% decrease in circulation activity of the frontal lobe of the brain. And so we're trying to enhance the frontal lobe. And so, unfortunately, a lot of these gadgets.
So I'll kind of go over a little bit of what he said, because that might be a little bit hard to hear. When you sit down and you watch television, it suppresses the blood flow to the frontal lobe. And what's interesting about the frontal lobe is it's the seat of your morality, your spirituality, and the will. It's where you talk to God. When you pray to God, you don't pray to Him in your hand or your feet. You speak to God in your mind, and more specifically, the frontal lobe. That's why we encourage people not to drink, because it affects the frontal lobe and your decision-making process. So when you watch television, it suppresses this part of the brain. Another thing that they found out that's a very interesting phenomenon is your brain is like a computer. It can only process so much information at once. And so you have two parts to your brain, a left side and a right side. The left side is your critical, analytical, and logical side of the brain. It's what's listening to me right now, and you're making decisions about what I'm saying. The left side of your brain is sitting there putting things in boxes and saying, I agree with him or I don't agree with him. The right side of your brain is your artistic, dreamy, emotional side of the brain. And what happens when you watch TV is in 30 seconds, your brain flips from the left side of the brain to the right side of the brain, and it opens your mind and does not critically think about the information as it goes into your brain. This is scientifically proven. How many of you have ever seen a 3D movie? Anyone? Okay, quite a few of you, right? Did you look up on the internet what happens in your brain when you watch a 3D movie before you went and watched it? No? I looked up on the internet, and I suggest you do this too. What happens inside of your brain when you watch a 3D movie? And look at what I found. There's a doctor here. His name is Michael Rich, and he studies what happens in the brain with all this media interaction, specifically a 3D movie. So he's answering the question, what happens in your brain when you watch a 3D movie? And this is what it says. So what does your brain do when it's sitting there in a theater, looking at a giant screen and wearing 3D glasses, swimming in surround sound and processing 24 images that flip by per second? Your brain dutifully processes those stimuli and does little else. In fact, your prefrontal cortex, which is your frontal lobe, which is involved in impulse control, future thinking, and moral choices, is inactivated during this process. It's shut off. And so that is why you get lost in a movie. So follow me here. Your brain cannot process this kind of information at once. So in order for your brain to compensate, it stops using the frontal lobe and it reacts off of your limbic system. You open your mind as wide as you open it, and they can tell you whatever they want to tell you, and you will not critically think about it at the time that it goes in. Brothers and sisters, do you wonder why Mrs. White cautioned, maybe it's not a good idea to be involved in the theater? And you know what? She wasn't talking about movies. She was talking about simple acting. What would she have said with our cinema today? Does that make sense? We now know the science of what's happening, because if you're not critically thinking about the information that's coming in, brothers and sisters, it matters what movies you watch. It completely matters. Here's something that goes on inside your brain as well. You have these things called gears, brainwave patterns. And if you think of them more like gears, you have delta, theta, alpha, and beta. And these are the different states that your brain is in throughout the day. They're not bad states. God designed our brains to be like this. But if you think of it like driving a stick shift in a car. So you have to drive through town, you have to use first and second and third and fourth gear. You need all these states to operate your brain all day long. What they have found out is that when you watch TV, your brain switches from beta, which is when you're awake and excited, into alpha brainwave pattern, and it stays in alpha brainwave pattern. It's not a bad brainwave pattern to be in, it's just a highly suggestible brainwave pattern. If you go into the state of hypnosis, your brain is in alpha brainwave pattern. If you do drugs, your brain is in alpha brainwave pattern. Once again, it's not a bad brainwave pattern to be in, but it's a very suggestible brainwave pattern. The reason I'm telling you this is how influential is Hollywood? I found this article. I don't know if you've heard of these two individuals. Their names are Lil Wayne and Nicki Minaj. One is a rapper and one is an R&B artist. And Florida, the state of Florida, honored them as Teachers of the Year. How many of you knew they were teachers? Anyone? Listen to what this article says. They're named the best teachers of the year because they were judging them on several categories and deeming them more influential than teachers who spend entire days with children. They're more influential with children than those people that the children spend all day long with. That's why they honored them as Teachers of the Year. How many of you have heard of Taylor Swift? Yeah, maybe a few of you. Here's what she said in Time magazine. She's talking about the people that follow her music and her fans, and she's talking about them, and she says, Swift is happy to minister to them. I think it's interesting the language that she's using. They're discovering music that tells them how they're going to live their lives and how they should feel, how it's acceptable to feel. She thinks that's kind of exciting. You see, the celebrities know that people follow them. There was a magazine article in Time magazine that asked the question, is celebrity worship good for your health or bad for your health? And this is what the article says. It says, who's here has fallen victim to a little bit of celebrity worship? New scientific research found that celebrity crushes are not only common, but they're healthy. Now listen to why they say this in this article. They said because people form bonds in their minds with their favorite celebrities, they are able to assimilate those celebrities' characteristics in themselves. I find this to be 100% true. If you watch and follow a particular actor over and over and over again, the more you focus on that actor, the more you want to take on his characteristics in yourself. Brothers and sisters, if you focus on Jesus Christ more and more, who do you want to become like? Like Jesus Christ. Do you see the difference here? Where you spend your time, that's we're like little monkeys. All we do is monkey see, monkey do. We soak in what we watch and then we repeat what we see. The scientific research is telling us this. There's lots of internet research that has been on celebrity worship. It says that there is a very need to find an idol and follow him. It's programmed into our DNA. And this is 100% true. God designed us to worship. He made us to worship. He made us to worship him and him only. And the devil looks at this and he says, interesting. If I can get them to worship anything other than their God, I've got them. And so be careful following these different celebrities. There was a movie that came out called Anchorman, and it was kind of a funny comedy in the United States. And the reason I'm showing you this is because there is a business that understands the power of celebrities. It's called the advertising industry. And they put this particular gentleman that played the lead character in Anchorman in a commercial about cars. And in the commercial, he told you nothing about the car. He told, in the commercial, all he said was how many sandwiches you could fit into the glove box. That was it. Nothing else. He didn't tell you how it drives. He didn't tell you the gas mileage. He didn't tell you anything about the function of the car. He literally told you you can fit 12, 15 sandwiches in the glove box. Now look at this. Sales went up by 40% of that particular car. It's mind-boggling. So I started looking into the advertising industry and seeing why are advertisements so powerful and why do they affect us? This is a particular person that studies advertising, and he creates advertising campaigns. And listen to what he says, how you sell something to somebody.
Part of marketing is about creating emotional responses. And I mean, that's the whole idea of art, right? It's why you go to a museum. It's why art influences, inspires us. And applying that to marketing is something we've always thought, very heavily about. It's about bringing design, bringing emotion, creativity, and passion.
So he says the way that they market their products is they put design and they mean to affect you emotionally, right? Anybody in sales in here? You ever sell anything? You know anybody that's in sales? The best way to sell somebody is to sell to their emotions, right? Here's what a business writer talks about.
Who in this room has ever bought something they didn't really need? Yeah? Okay, some people have got 2 hands up. So you're standing in front of it, you're going, I don't need it, can't afford it, it's not practical, and you walk. Because of the emotion it makes you share this. There's a guy called Tom Peters. Now, I was reading an interview he did with an executive from Harley Davidson. So he's interviewing their top executive. And he said, halfway through the interview, yeah, but you just sell motorbikes. And the executive said, Tom, you have missed the point. He said, we don't sell motorbikes. And Tom Peters says, well, what do you sell? He said, we sell the ability for a 43-year-old accountant to dress in black leather, drive through a small country town, and have people be afraid of him. He said, we sell an emotion. We sell a feeling. He said, if you use logic to buy a motorbike, you buy a Japanese one. They're awesome. He said, you buy a Harley because of how it feels.
So this is how things are sold to us. They rope our emotions into it. How are you going to feel if you have those shoes? How are you going to feel if you have that new suit? Did you know that early on, in the early 1900s, products were sold to you based on how long you would be able to use them? The shoes will last you a year. The car will go this far. You know what? Today, they sell you products based on this is how you're going to feel when you put those shoes on. And everybody goes and buys them, right? How many of you have heard the term sex sells? Why? Why does sex work? Have you heard of subliminal advertising? So here's an example of how sex sells. This is a subliminal advertisement that is selling sex. Look in between the birds and the bees. How many people see it? How many people don't see it? You don't see it. Look in between the birds and the bees. Here's the bee, here's the bird, right in between here. I'll put it up here. The word sex is written in the flower. If you turn your face away and you look back, even if I take it away, you will always see the word sex. This is how subliminal advertising works, because it plays upon our emotions, right? So here is an example of how they're doing this. This is a candy company. Do you notice it here? Yes? The Skittle is cleverly placed next to the word explosions. Here's another example. We have a soap in the United States called Axe. You guys have the soap here? So this isn't much of a stretch. There's an S right here, an E and an X. There's an S, an E, and an X. And I want you to notice this one. There's no S there, but it says 33% more, and they show you a picture of a girl. So you get what, 33% more bubbles? No! They're appealing to your sex so that when you look at this product, you go, oh, I'll get that many more girls if I use this. Right? Why do they sell a car with a beautiful girl? You ever wondered this? What does the beautiful girl have anything to do with the function of the car? Does she make it go further? Does she make it last longer? No. But when you watch a commercial like that, they're pushing your pleasure button so that when you see that car, you go, ah, I like Ford. But you don't know why. So this got me to study. We have a chemical that is released inside of our brains. It's a little hormone that women release called oxytocin. When you have a child, this hormone is released so that you will be bonded to your child. And it helps a mother connect with their child. So all of a sudden, we found a neuroeconomist in Southern California who had studied this chemical called oxytocin. And Hollywood had used his studies to use the ability to release oxytocin when people watch their commercials. So when you watch the commercial, you will be loving and bonded to that commercial in the same way a mother would be bonded to her child. And here is the interview that we interviewed this neurologist.
Discovered that this hormone called oxytocin facilitates trust between strangers. Because when someone trusts you, your brain releases this, and it motivates you to reciprocate, to be trustworthy. So this led us into a variety of studies where we both measured and manipulated oxytocin in the human brain to figure out why we had so much trust between strangers. So since we've done that, we started looking at trust in other things, like in people you don't know, politicians, the government, advertisers. So for advertising, we asked this question, which is, why are there puppies in toilet paper commercials? Puppies don't use toilet paper. They have nothing to do with toilet paper. Unless you're really out of toilet paper, you might use the puppy. So what's going on with that? So we all know intuitively that advertisers want to grab our emotions. They want to engage us in this product. They want us to trust them, to trust this product. So we started thinking that maybe this has something to do with oxytocin.
So there is some real scientific research that goes behind these commercials, that build these commercials. There's also another thing that's very interesting with the advertising industry. They use a little trick called hypnosis in commercials. Now, I didn't know anything about hypnosis before I started out working on this documentary. And here's an example of them using hypnosis in a commercial. This is for a telephone company called Virgin.
Deserve Virgin Mobile, but something in your brain is afraid to switch. It's time to retrain the brain. Retrain your brain. Virgin Mobile. All the phones you want. Get one for 8.
So, how many thought that was weird? It doesn't make any sense, right? So here's something that's very interesting about hypnosis. I went and interviewed a hypnotherapist because I didn't know anything about it. And this is the hypnotherapist. And we asked him the question, how does it work? Well, what's going on here? And specifically, why have we heard this, that they use these in commercials? And listen to what he says.
What they'll do with hypnosis, and this is where people become susceptible to it, is they'll overwhelm you with information. So you look at a commercial, and you see all this information that comes all in at one time. And you see this goofy stuff, and you go like, what is going on there? So what you've just done now is go into a questioning part of your mind. You've got a ton of new information, and you're trying to figure out what it is. So they want to get you into an emotion. You think about the commercial. Does the commercial get you an emotion? Not really. They rely on the TV show to get you into the emotion. The cliffhanger, they go right to break, and you go, oh, wow, I can't wait till this is going to be over. The commercial comes on, you're in state, Pavlov's dog, remember, ringing the bell, the dog's salivating, and then all of a sudden they got this new information that comes in. And the information is meant to get you into using that state that you're now in, that curiosity, that cliffhanger, that anxiety, so to speak, of what's going to happen next, and associate the product with it.
So how it works is the brain doesn't like to be confused. In fact, when the brain is confused, there is some very interesting things that the brain will do. Do you see that he just reached his hand out to me? Now, I didn't tell him to shake my hand. So why'd you shake my hand? Here's why. Because every single one of us has a computer program inside of our brains that says when somebody holds their hand out to you, the courteous thing to do is shake their hand. So I didn't even have to tell him. All I had to do was give him the action, and he's still doing it. The way that a hypnotherapist can grab a hold of your mind is if they interrupt that process. So if they went to go shake the hand like this and then they went sleep, now he's confused. And when the brain is confused, it wants to make sense of the world, and the first thing that it grabs onto is a command. So a commercial will show you very weird, very odd things, and in 30 seconds, that's all it takes for your brain to go into a state of hypnosis, and then they show you their product. Bam. And if you pay attention, did you know that most commercials end with a ding or a dong? or some kind of snap or something that, a jingle or a chime. It's their way to bring you into a state of hypnosis, snap you, and show you their product. They use it all the time. And that's why a commercial is 30 seconds, because this is how it works. Now, there's also another interesting thing that is going on here. There's a thing called neuro-linguistic programming. We have the technology to change someone's brain based on what we say. I'll give you an example. My body language is giving you an information, and my mouth is giving you information. I can give you two messages at once. If I said, I like smart people, and I'm touching my breast, psychologically to you, what am I telling you? I'm smart. That's right. So I'm giving you a message saying, I'm smart and I like smart people. Now, this guy here in the blonde, this guy asked him if you could have any birthday present you want, write it down on a piece of paper and put it in your pocket. So he wrote it down on a piece of paper and he put it in his pocket. And he said, I'm going to change what you think you wrote on this pocket. And it's called neuro-linguistic programming. So listen to how he does this.
You know you have to have. What is that feeling like? Describe it for me.
I guess it's quite sort of sudden, and you have a definite positivity about it, and often you'll go away and see other things, but then you come back to the thing you saw first.
Excellent. Well, just take that feeling and just amplify it for me, because it is a really good feeling. It's important to understand that feeling and positivity that you describe. Okay.
So I want to mention something first. All hypnosis is based on feelings. If you noticed, he said, what does it feel like when you see the present that you want? I want you to remember that feeling of what it's like. That's what he said. Everything is based on feelings. There's a reason why that is important in the light of movies.
Very nice to meet you, and thank you for coming on the show. Let me explain to you how I buy gifts or presents for people, alright? And this is the best way to handle, bar none, the problem of, what to sell for when you're going to buy gifts for somebody that's a little bit difficult to buy for, alright? Now what I do is, rather than recycle the same sort of 2 tired bottles of wine or box of chocolates, which are no fun to receive, I go out and I buy anything, and then I make that person fall in love with it, alright? By creating a strong feeling of desire for that object. So all sort of pumped up, they get that feeling of that positivity you were describing, they beam excitement for it. And, it's a win-win thing, because they get a present that they love, and, I get rid of some stuff out the back of my kitchen cupboard or whatever. What I want you to really understand about this is that feeling is so strong, can be so extreme, that it can replace the memory of what they actually want. So even though 2 days before they may have said, I want X, whatever that is, like a really nice car, like a BMW, or an Xbox, or something like that, something they really wanted, suddenly now they think they always wanted what I got them. Does that make sense? Yeah, excellent, cool. Good, so, you can have anything you like. What's your dream present?
BMX bike.
So then he tells him to pull the piece of paper out of his pocket and look at what he wrote on it.
I came here thinking, if I can suss this out, if there's some kind of thing going on that I can work out logically, I'm going to play along. But I'm stunned. That's definitely my right. That's my J. And I've got no need for a leather jacket, and I don't know what's going on.
He wrote that he wanted a leather jacket. And then he was confused because he said, no, I don't want a leather jacket, I want a bike. And the guy said, no, I changed your mind. And he said, no, I don't want a leather jacket, I wanted a bike. Brothers and sisters, we have the technology to use words to change people's minds. So what if, now we're starting to get to where the nuts and the bolts are, what if somebody in Hollywood wanted to change your mind about anything? And they started to write these things into movies. Could they change your mind? Could they change your belief system that you believe in God by simply using words? He tested this by going to a movie theater, and he wrote in the movie a subliminal advertisement that said, you're going to forget the movie you just watched. That's all he put in there. And then he let people watch the movie, and then he interviewed them when they came out of the movie, and he wanted to see, did they really forget the movie that they just watched?
Can I have a look at where it says forget the film over the girl with the rose hair? I think that's a frame too long. Let me get it down to one frame. cinema in East London, which kindly agreed to include our ad amongst the trailers for a screening of Ocean's 12, a carefully chosen film which, if the ad works, the audience will not be able to remember. Not a bad thing. For legal reasons, patrons were told that some filming would happen, but our cameras were hidden in dark corners and people had no idea of the experiment. Obviously, I didn't expect the ad to make everyone forget the film, but I hoped a few would.
So anyway, he interviewed them when they came out, and listen to how many people forgot the movie that they just watched.
Our cinema audience has now watched the film after absorbing my special ad. We stopped them on their way out to see what they could remember.
Why don't you tell me about the film you just saw?
It's a bit weird.
So how often do you go to the film?
I think about once a month.
Is there a particular genre you like or don't like?
I like foreign movies.
But this one
And I don't remember anything about the movie.
It's about a house that goes wrong. And then it comes together because the guy's got a contact with his mother.
If I try to picture the actual scene, I see like a set. It's going to sound even worse, like just a set.
I remember the whole thing. Yeah, whole thing. Yeah, wicked, awesome film.
I can only remember like casually like going into the cinema and then like when I came out, my mind just went blank and I don't know why.
I can't remember anything.
So not everybody forgot, but they have the ability to change your mind based on subliminal advertising, based on using words, and movies are made up of just nothing but music, words, and images. That's it. So this technology truly exists. There's another thing that's really interesting. They're starting to put people in fMRI machines and study their brains on their reactions to certain movies. They call it neurocinema. And here is a director showing you how they actually do this, testing people's brains.
With neurocinema technology, filmmakers can now look inside your mind and make better movies. I'm Peter Katz. I'm a film producer. Studios rely on people to accurately fill out questionnaires after a test screening. The problem is, it's difficult to remember specific details of a film and what you felt about each scene. We will scan the brain of our test subject, Bridget. She's going to watch my horror film Popsicle inside an fMRI machine to measure her fear. Bridget will watch 2 scenes in a Siemens 3T MRI. The data from the scan will be converted to a real-time view of Bridget's amygdala and other regions of her brain to be analyzed by the team.
Okay, we're going to get started, Bridget. Are you doing okay? All right, here we go. What we're looking for, the amygdala, is right here. So after we analyze this in about 2 weeks, we are hoping to see activation here, the amygdala.
So you can see fear. Like if she's scared, like if she's actually scared, you can see that right on the brain.
The amygdala controls fear, anger, rage, anything that's fight or flight. So if she's having any of those emotions, I think that's pretty good for a horror film.
So what they do is they test the brain to see how it reacts to the movie, and then they go back and they recut the movie to give you the maximum effect. How did I tell you hypnosis works? It works on emotion, right? The greater emotional rush that you give to somebody, the better hypnostate that you can put them in. What are movies making you do? Why do you like the particular movies that you go to? Because it gives you an emotional rush. Why do commercials work so well during sports games? Why are they sold for millions and millions and millions of dollars during sports games, but not at any other time? Because what emotional state are people in when they watch sports games? And that commercial works that much better on your brain. The better and better they can make a movie give you an emotional rush, the better and better the message is soaked into your brain. Does that make sense? You know, a particular movie that they did this with, how many of you have heard of a movie called Avatar? Yes, James Cameron? They tested people in fMRI machines and went back and constantly tailored the movie based on how people were affected by that. Here's an article that talks about that. So here's an example of your brain. This person is watching a commercial, and I want you to pay attention to something. This commercial is Alice in Wonderland, okay? So they've got their brain hooked up to a fMRI machine, and this is a real time. And remember what I said, it takes 20 to 30 seconds for the brain's frontal lobe to go away. So when she falls down into the bottom of the pit, she's probably at about 20 seconds right here. And when she hits the floor, she's probably about 25 seconds. I want you to pay attention to this. Notice this, in 30 seconds, it's going, 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 gone. Brothers and sisters, we know the science of how your brain works. We've tested this thing. There's research on the internet. You can look it up till your heart's content. It matters what you watch. It matters what you go and put yourself in front of. Another thing that's really interesting is they have eye tracking technology. So they put these things on the side of their head and they test, what are you looking at in the frame? So they can test where in the frame is this person going to look, which means they can put things in corners based on where they know you're going to look. Brothers and sisters, the movie industry is honing in on their skills to be able to affect you. They make millions and millions of dollars on it. The reason I'm telling you this is because I haven't even got to the movies yet. I haven't even shown you one movie, one clip. I haven't even analyzed one story yet. All I'm trying to do is illustrate a point. You are affected by everything you watch. It is how commercials are so effective. They would not spend millions of dollars if it didn't work. Does that make sense? Here he's talking about a particular movie. I'm going to speed through this just for the sake of time because I've been taking a little bit more time. He also talks about how he notices in movies, they write movies in the exact same way that he uses to put someone in a state of hypnosis. If you've ever talked to anybody who's even been in hypnosis, they don't swing a clock in front of you. They don't flash a light at you sometimes. What they do is they tell you what they call a U-shaped story. They start a story over here and they don't finish the story. And then they move over here and they tell another story. And they bounce back and forth between the two stories. And when those two stories converge at the bottom, you are in your deepest state of hypnosis and they can plant a seed. So if you want to stop smoking, they would plant a seed saying every time you pick up a cigarette, it will make you feel sick. That's how it works. It's based on emotion. If you've been abused as a child, they will tell you whenever you get into this situation, you feel happy thoughts or whatever like this. They're planting seeds that stick to your emotions. That's how it works. So he noticed that in movies, they do this all the time. So in the movie Inception, which was with Leonardo DiCaprio, he said, this is wonderful. They wrote this movie just like I write, how I put someone in a state of hypnosis. They tell stories like this, and then when their deepest state, they get to the bottom, they're in their deepest state of hypnosis. And I haven't seen this movie, but I asked him. I said, so in the movie, tell me about it. When you were in your deepest state of hypnosis, what was going on? And he said, oh, it's great. The movie was about a thief, and the thief is trying to go into your mind, and he's trying to steal something from your mind, and he was trying to change this person's ideas of who his father is. Brothers and sisters, my spiritual alarm bells went off. And I said, you know what? There's a thief that's trying to get into my mind, that's trying to change my views of my father. Do you know what we call that? We call that Gnosticism. Flipping the story of the great controversy around. So I went into Google and I just looked up these two things. The name of the movie and Gnosticism, and look at what I found. This movie teaches Gnosticism. This movie teaches Gnosticism. This movie teaches Gnosticism. There's website after website that said this movie is preaching to you Gnosticism. So let me put it in this perspective. When you go to the movie theater, you open your mind as wide as you can open. You don't think about the information that comes into your brain. They can preach whatever they want to preach to you, and you will not think about it. And if they want to preach to you an alternate religion, you will soak that up and keep it in your mind. That is the power that the devil has created with this movie industry. I'm telling you this because when I was a teenager, I saw a particular movie called Fight Club. It was a popular movie back in early 2000s. And when I saw this movie, I absolutely loved it. I watched it over and over and over again. In fact, I memorized the movie. I could quote you half of the movie. When I started picking up my Bible, God showed me something. And so I gave a presentation at one of our Adventist universities in the United States. And I'm asking the kids, you'll see the room, how many of you have seen this movie? I want you to watch how many hands go up.
I want to ask a quick question. I have seen this movie probably 20 times, maybe more. This was one of my favorite films. How many people in this room have seen this movie? Look at how many hands just went up. Can somebody tell me in this movie where they speak about God? You got one person. What scene? One person. All of you people raised your hand, and only one person told me when they talk about God.
So in a room full of 600 kids who are at an Adventist school, who have grown up probably reading their Bibles, who know the truth, no one in the room but one person could remember in the movie where they talk about God. And I'll show you what is said about God.
Our fathers were models for God. If our fathers failed, what does that tell you about God? Listen to me. You consider the possibility that God does not like you, never wanted you. In all probability, He hates you. It's not the worst thing that can happen. We need Him.
We don't
Damnation, man. Redemption. We are God's unwanted children. So be it. Listen, you can run water over your head to make it worse, or look at me. Or you can use vinegar to neutralize the burn.
Please let me have it, please.
First, you have to give up. First, you have to know, not fear. Know that someday you're gonna die.
You don't know how this feels.
It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything.
Brothers and sisters, this is the power the movie industry has over our lives. They can tell you whatever you want, and you wonder, why are our youth leaving the church? I have a passion for our youth. Brothers and sisters, when I was 18 years old, I walked out of this church. I grew up reading the Spirit of Prophecy. I knew the great controversy. I knew the war between God and Satan, and I said, I don't want it. Why? Because I filled my mind with this, and I didn't know where my thoughts were coming from. I hope and pray, brothers and sisters, that you come tomorrow, come to the presentations. As we get into some of these topics, some of this is going to be hard to hear, but you've got to understand we are engaged in a war, and that war is for our minds. But brothers and sisters, I don't want to leave you with this. God is more powerful than any of this. God can turn anyone around. I filled my mind with His stuff. And when I decided to get back into reading my Bible, God took my tastes for this kind of thing away. The closer I drew to God, the less I wanted this stuff in my life. And I stand firm on that. The closer you draw to Jesus, the stranger the things of this world will grow strangely dim. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, thank you so much. The loving ways that you constantly try to win us back. Lord, as we discuss this media topic over this weekend, I just pray, Lord, that we see a clear picture of how much you love us and how much you want your righteousness
to be in us. And just, Lord, I pray for all of the details of this weekend with the technical deals, with the electricity, everything, so that, Lord, this message can be brought to this church. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.